Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. I'm joined by the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, as well as 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director, Ryan Young. I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director, Doug Falconer. And first off this week, the Farm Credit Canada Farmland Values Report came out. Kevin, did you have a chance to peruse that report?
Yeah, I went through it extensively, and on the surface, it looks like, oh, farmland prices continue to surge ahead. But when you look deeper in the numbers, Saskatchewan's rate of increase is slowing. In one region, if you look at some of the regions, they're up like 12%, Northwest, Northeast, East Central, but West Central is only up 4%. And you look at some other areas of the country, BC in total was down a little bit in farmland prices, with some major drops in the Kootenay region and also the Fraser Valley. If you look at Ontario, and it's cropland in Ontario, they had a couple of their regions that showed no increase, and the region south and west of London actually showed a decrease in farmland values. So right now, the way commodity prices look, the way costs look, with the outlook for the year ahead, I believe that the farmland values report, when it comes out a year from now, showing 2026 values, could look significantly different. We see some caution flags coming up in the numbers, especially in other regions, and a lot of the anecdotal evidence is that the demand for land is somewhat softer, particularly for lower quality land. And I think that we might see a slowing or a plateauing of farmland prices when we get statistics for 2026, but that will be a year from now.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Of course, over the weekend, we heard that there was reportedly a spill at the intensive livestock operation at Manette Farms at Lac Pelche, just south of Swift Current. Ryan, you followed up on that.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting story. Just kind of going back to the beginning, it was a local citizens group called the Friends of Lac Peltier. They were the ones to report the alleged effluent spill to the Ministry of Environment spill emergency line twice over the weekend. And from there was some tests done by government officials from both the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Environment. And after some tests, they concluded that there was no manure effluent spill runoff into Lac Peltier, which is nearby this livestock operation. And in the case of Manette Farms, they said that it was only melting snow that was running off into their approved water management areas or holding ponds, if you want to use a simple term. So it's just kind of the latest chapter in this ongoing, I guess, if you want to call it, feud between the Friends of Lake Peltier and Manette Farms. There was a lot of concern over this intensive livestock operation last year with how close they are to the lake, and it's kind of a popular destination if you go to, southwestern Saskatchewan for tourism. There's a year-round community there. The lake also provides a lot of drinking water to a hamlet nearby and for the campground community. So a lot of concerns around the smell of the operation and, of course, the possibility of sewage or wastewater getting spilled over into the lakes. So again, just their tests show that there was no manure spill whatsoever, and kind of case closed.
Kevin, your reaction to the news?
I think the people around Lac Peltier are overreacted. The livestock operations are very closely regulated once they get to a significant size and called intensive. And there'd be no reason why the retention ponds wouldn't be more than adequate in a year like this when snowfall has been below normal, although the snowfall melt what was there, and it tended to happen very quickly when it warmed up. But it's not even that large an operation. I think it's like, a few thousand head, which compared to feedlots in Saskatchewan and Manitoba is not very large. And I think there's always going to be people concerned about operations like this, and in this case, obviously overreacted. And I think even the opposition party caught on and was demanding answers as well without doing their own research.
We also heard this week that some agri-stability changes were announced for livestock producers. It sounds like these were actually previously announced, but just have some deadlines and that sort of thing, Kevin?
Yeah, and good changes, thoughtful changes. There's no reason why when you rent pasture land that it shouldn't be considered an eligible expense, so that if that expense rises and decreases your margin, that it is reflected in agri-stability. And also they've, I think, made a very logical change to inventory adjustment and don't penalize producers for carrying over feed into dry years when the price rises. So their inventory adjustment makes good sense too. And I think these kind of common sense changes continue to be made for agri-stability. Maybe there's more that can be done. The program will never meet everybody's expectations, but I think these are very logical changes.
Also this week, there was an agricultural policy framework summit held in Saskatoon, put on by APAS. And Ryan, you followed that pretty closely.
Yeah, absolutely. The Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan, they kind of got the ball rolling in their involvement with the engagement/consultation process with the next policy framework, which we know will succeed the current Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership in a couple of years' time. So they invited out a variety of experts from the Ministry of Agriculture, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and other producer groups were there as well, and the University of Saskatchewan, so on and so forth, to kind of provide their own unique perspectives on the next policy framework and what that should look like in 2028. One of the interesting things was a producer panel that was held towards the end of the summit, and they had three producers that come from different backgrounds, one livestock producer, one grain producer, and another as a mixed producer with both grain and cattle. And they were just simply asked what they would like to see included in the new framework. One of them said that they would like to see an emphasis on food sovereignty. Another guy said that, bringing agriculture to the forefront of the Canadian economy or making it, a major fact or a major economic driver. Have it more in the spotlight so we can get a bigger piece of the pie, so to speak. That's his priority. And then the other producer said that, should be a little bit more emphasis on the business risk management programs and continuing to support those, giving high marks for like agri-invest and agri-stability, so on and so forth. So they're going to take all of this information and stuff and kind of bring it forward towards July, when all the federal, provincial, and territorial agriculture ministers will meet in Halifax in July. Kind of the goal there is to kind of bring a basic statement in place by July. So that's kind of the news there.
Kevin, does it sound like the results of this summit kind of hit the nail on the head as to what needs to be done in the future APF?
Well, it's good to see the consultation starting so early, because in the past I don't recall extensive consultations with producers, with farm groups holding public meetings this far in advance. In fact, sometimes in front of 5-year ag policy frameworks, there's been so much delay that the new policy framework has to be delayed because nothing is in place. I think this is a controversial opinion, perhaps, but I think agriculture needs to identify areas of cuts as well as areas where additional spending is needed, because industries tend to only talk about more, and I think we're going to be into a situation where governments are going to need to start cutting spending to rein in the deficits and growing debt we have. One of the things that I believe should be cut is the On-Farm Climate Action Fund. Most of that money is going to Atlantic Canada, where it's not really doing that much to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. And producers many times in the prairie region don't even know there's some funding available for some various initiatives. Another thing, and this will be really controversial, I believe Agri-Invest is not an effective program. If you have $1 million in eligible net sales, you're eligible for $10,000 in free government money. All you have to do is put a matching contribution into your lending or your banking institution. The government matches it, and that money is yours. Now, for somebody with eligible net sales of $1 million, $10,000 is, and that's the maximum, doesn't seem like that much money compared to other expenses. Now, $10,000 for a low-income family would be a really big deal. So I disagree with the premise of Agri-Invest that producers, whether they're profitable or whether they are not profitable, are eligible for this 1% of eligible net sales as a support program payment every year.
All right. And of course, as we speak right now, the war in the Middle East is raging on. The Strait of Hormuz is closed for the most part, and that means fuel and fertilizer prices continue to jump up for everyday Canadians. Ryan, you had a chance to speak with a number of people this week about the fuel price.
Yeah, absolutely. Including this morning, I talked to the vice president of the Canadian Fuels Association, Carol Montry. I also spoke to Kevin as well, just to get his thoughts on diesel and fuel prices, and we'll get to that in a moment. Also talked with the executive vice president and chief operating officer of UFA Cooperative, Don Smith. And the one thing that I learned through this process the last couple days was how difficult it was to get diesel prices. It's not very hard to get gasoline prices and get a sense of where things are at, but diesel prices, I was kind of surprised that there wasn't a site that was readily available with prices. So more or less, I just kind of got the Canadian average for diesel prices and, kind of trying to remember what diesel prices are here around the Regina area. Now, obviously, they can vary greatly depending on the supplier and local demand and supply and among other factors. But from what I got from Carol, he said that a lot of places had diesel prices above $2 a liter, with some places having diesel in the range of $2.25 all the way up to $2.50 a liter. So that's quite a bit. Obviously, as you mentioned, Doug, the conflict in Iran and the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has been kind of the primary factor for the oil prices spiking considerably over the last week and a half or so. But in terms of an outlook from Carol's perspective, he said, while things don't look good right now, and everybody has the right to be concerned about prices being expensive as they are nowadays, Canada is actually kind of more insulated when it comes to these sorts of things compared to other countries where they've had to put a cap on gas prices to kind of control the demand and prices. And considering that we're a net exporter of oil, that's a good thing for us as well. We have a lot of oil reserves as well, so that also bodes well for us. I also asked him about whether this should be an opportunity for Canada to be a bigger player on the world stage when it comes to providing oil and energy to the world, because we know that there's quite a bit of oil exports that come through the Strait of Hormuz. He said, absolutely, there's no doubt that Canada can actually, step up to the plate and contribute to what the world needs, to kind of borrow a government phrase. So those were kind of the key takeaways from him. Don Smith, he basically said that UFA is kind of prepared to, meet the current challenges and meet the demand from customers. They have a wide supply of diesel and gasoline, but other than that, that's pretty much all he had to say, unfortunately. And that's kind of what I got from those two people. And Kevin, if you don't mind just reiterating your thoughts on diesel prices and where they are.
Well, you're right. It's a little tough to get an accurate price. And farm diesel is a different animal. The price you see at a pump for diesel has the tax added onto it, whereas farmers get some tax break on fuel used for farm use. It's dyed diesel or farm diesel. And the prices I was able to come up with, and also another factor, it's bulk deliveries, which changes the price and lessens the price. So it looks like diesel, farm diesel, depending, and it changes every day, and it's different by one supplier to the next. Might be $1.50, $1.60 a liter, but that is up dramatically. And you start looking at it, it's easy to see how that could add $5, $7, $10 an acre to the cost of farming this year compared to the price that was in place prior to the Middle East conflict breaking out. And diesel prices and fuel prices, everything is being affected. The price of glyphosate and glufosinate is going up. If you're getting grain custom trucked, and they wouldn't have the tax reduced on that diesel, that is another cost as well. So all of this is going to cascade through the farm economy, through the regular economy. When we see inflation numbers for March finally be released, I think that you will see quite a spike because of the impact of fuel prices.
All right. And then, of course, also this week in the Senate, a bill was passed regarding soil protection, soil strategies. Kevin, what's your opinion on that bill?
There's nothing bad you can say about it, but really it's pretty ineffectual or pretty vague at this point. It's sort of like apple pie and goodness, and there's really no meat to the proclamation that soil is important. Well, I think we knew that before. What is this bill going to do? Well, we're going to have a national soil strategy. Canadians, I think, we're sometimes so tied up in process we don't get any progress done. Everybody is slapping themselves on the back over this bill passing, and the agriculture minister and the Senate leader on this bill. But really, from a farmer's perspective, there's really nothing new or nothing tangible, at least not at this point.
Also, on late Monday morning, we heard that there was some news breaking out of the United States from the Environmental Protection Agency regarding biodiesel. What have you heard there, Kevin?
Yeah, and stuff is just still coming out and is kind of preliminary, but the market seems to be disappointed. Now, the volume of fuel required or biofuel required in the U.S. is going to rise, but especially in this first year, 26, 27, they were anticipating, the observers were anticipating that there would be a RIN credit detriment to imported biofuels into the U.S., and that was not part of this legislation. So imported palm oil or whatever from wherever can still go into the U.S. in the year ahead, and even though volumes are higher, the market was not expecting this to be part of the EPA's renewable fuel announcement, and initial indications are that the market was basically disappointed. The reality didn't meet expectations, and the market has decreased somewhat, at least initially. What I'm not clear about is how Canadian, starting after 26, 27, there will be a detriment for RIN credits for imported product. What I don't know is whether Canadian canola oil will also be to its detriment in that regard, or whether that was already factored into the equation. The whole renewable fuel standard stuff is very complicated, and it'll take a while, I think, for the experts to fully get the gist of what's happening and its ramifications out to everybody else.
And finally, I understand that, Ryan, you had a chance to speak with the executive director of the Canadian Cattle Association. There might be some news coming out of there next week.
That's right. I did an interview with the new CEO of the Canadian Cattle Association, Andrea Brocklebank, if I have the name right. It was a wide-ranging interview. Kind of the basis of it was the annual general meeting that the CCA had earlier this week. We talked about the CFIA proposed traceability changes and some discussion around that. In fact, she said that they're going to have an announcement related to that next week. Tried to get a little bit of information out of her, but unfortunately, she kept the cards close to her chest, so stay tuned for that. We also talked about trade within the context of the upcoming CUSMA review, as well as a little bit of trade news between Canada and Brazil's. Apparently, some Brazilian beef will be making its way into Canada, so she had some comments about that. Also talked about the Canadian cattle herd and her thoughts on rebuilding that herd, especially since we're still dealing with very high cattle prices and producers enjoying that, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned next week for all that on SaskAg Today.
Sounds good. Well, that will do it for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young and the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer saying so long until next time.